the biggest film in all of the world, probably all of the history of mankind, except Avatar, maybe, I don't know, is the Avengers Infinity War. Barry, we're talking about it. We're finally to the Avengers 3.
Ooh, bigger than Avatar, I wonder. I'm wondering.
Avatar's just a weird film that just kept on going, despite the fact that, what are we, like 7 years removed from Avatar, and no one cares about Avatar?
Yeah, it's kind of, it exists in this weird space that maybe us young folk, we're all excited for our Marvels and our Star Warses, and we think in our little bubble that that's the biggest thing in the world, but there's this other species of person who, the biggest thing in the world is James Cameron making a new movie to some people, you know what I mean?
Just you wait until James Cameron directs the Avengers 5, and then...
Oh my god.
The Earth will just stand still.
No, my god, yeah. There will be just... We will just all, as a one human race, be watching movies at that point. Yeah, I was actually just out of curiosity because of how massively successful Infinity War was in its first weekend. It blew away the opening weekend records, but I wanted to remind myself what the overall, top box office grosses were. Obviously, I know Star Wars failed to topple Avatar, which I thought it would. I undersold the Avatar phenomenon. I double checked it there, and honestly, I don't want to say it didn't come close because it did really well. It got $2 billion, obviously, but I forgot that Avatar got $2.7 billion.
It's absurd. It's an absurd amount. I don't looking back on it. It just doesn't make sense, does it?
And I don't even remember. I mean, I remember it being really big. I do remember that, but but again, it's just how we measure what's really big is just kind of different these days. But I feel like the furore around that movie was nothing compared to Star Wars and Infinity War. But I guess what's that tell you? It had a very long tail, obviously, and I feel like your average Joe cinema goer cares more about James Cameron making a movie with cutting edge technology than the culmination of a superhero story. But I mean, yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy.
I'm kind of fascinated to see how Avatar 2 does, because it's not out until 2020, apparently. It's been delayed like 4 times already.
Yeah, it's like they keep delaying it, and then they keep adding more sequels to it. Like, they're constantly saying it's going to be like a 4 or 5 part thing, and it's like, okay, first of all, if it had any brand cachet, does it still have that? Second of all, did anyone come out of it really, really wanting to see another one, even if they liked it? I don't know. That's a whole other series of podcasts, though.
God, yeah, remember when Sam Worthington was a thing?
I barely remember who that is.
He was the lead in Avatar, and then he had a bunch of other things. It's like, oh, he's the next big thing. And then he also fell off the face of the earth.
Yeah. And also that was, like Michelle Rodriguez was in that. God, who else was in that?
Allowing us to pivot back to the Avengers Infinity War, Zoe Saldana was in it.
Was she? Oh, God, I do not remember a thing. I saw Avatar in the cinema, and I barely remember a thing about it.
In fairness, looking at the amount of money it made, I think everybody saw Avatar in the cinema.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy.
But a film, well, yeah, it's what? Avengers has been out less than a week as we speak. It's made $784 million already. As you said, it smashed the opening day or opening weekend records set by The Force Awakens, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, The Force Awakens set all those records, and it beat it by about $10 million or so. This is a big movie. It's also a very good movie.
Yes, it's a very, very good movie. So I'm really curious what the lifespan of that's going to be with repeat viewings and stuff. So I have seen this film twice.
So have I.
God, like a big massive nerd, I went to a midnight screening of it, and then I liked it so much that I had nothing to do. That was the Wednesday night, Thursday morning, and then I had nothing to do that following Saturday, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to go see it again. And I liked it even more the second time. I think I picked up on certain things. It is a fast-moving movie. Holy cow. There's a lot of stuff happening, and there's a lot of it happening at once. And it's just all action. And I don't mean action in terms of fighting. I just mean action in terms of, well, some fighting, but also just plot moving. It's just moving. It just goes. And so naturally, watching it at like 2 a.m., I did not pick up on all of it. But rewatching it, I was like, man, it's a densely packed 3 hours. That's for sure.
Yeah, this film is 149 minutes long. It's 2.5 hours. It is I think the fastest 2.5 hour film I've ever seen.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, and especially in this franchise, because this is a franchise, I mean, I'm sure we've talked about it in this, these Marvel movies, even the really great ones, they always have that half hour you just think you could probably trim. You could probably get it off there and especially your kind of more, solid, but ultimately kind of mid-tier films like Ant-Man, you're just like, yeah, you could have trimmed it. You could have trimmed it. This one, it's like, it's 2 hours 40, and I feel like there's no wasted motion. I think the most impressive thing the film does, for all its wide sense of scope and its massive budget, I think the most impressive thing it does is pace itself to the degree that it doesn't feel like 3 hours. And if anything, there's kind of stuff that's like left out of this movie. If anything, they one of my minor criticisms of the film is that there are certain things that the audience is just straight up told because they simply did not have time to squeeze it in to this insanely densely packed movie.
I think the biggest one of them is the location of the soul gem. It's just like, she knows. We don't really have time to explain why she knows, but she just knows.
Yeah, and that bothered me not so much within the context of a criticism of this movie, but so much as, how many... I mean, there's been 2 movies where Gamora has been a character, and there's been several movies since she was first introduced as a character that you could have stuck her into a post-credit scene learning this. So I asked on Twitter, because I was I legitimately could not remember. I was perfectly willing to be wrong on it, but I was like, is that info established anywhere else in a film? And people told me no. And I'm like, okay, specifically in Guardians 2's dozen post-credit scene, you could have had a little thing where you just one line of dialogue where she says, I have something to do, I have something to learn, I've a new adventure awaits. So that they forewent that. That's and that's a pretty blatant example of just of telling rather than showing. And the other one obviously is the other one's more minor. It's the Power Stone. Thanos starts the movie with that. And it is literally one throwaway line from Thor where he says that he devastated the Nova Corps.
Remember the big climactic scene of that first Guardians film? All those people are dead.
Remember the entire premise of that movie? Well, he is one line saying he just undid all that, so that was great. So this movie's got a lot of stuff going on. What are you gonna do?
It's fair that we say that, like, the very first scene of this film is most of Asgard just being murdered. So.
Yeah, and that kind of leads us nicely into the other kind of major thing about this film, aside from its length and its pacing and all that, and that is that this is unapologetically the culmination of a series, and this is the first. I don't think there's any MCU film that you just definitively could not watch, but this is the first one where I would recommend people not watch it if they don't have at least a mild familiarity with the franchise. Because someone says to me, I've heard Winter Soldier is good. Do I need to see Captain America 1 or any of the other films to understand it? I'm probably saying no. I'm like, it's a great film. You'll get the premise early on. They'll remind you, hey, Captain America is a frozen man from 100 years ago. And then you're off and running with the plot. Likewise, do I need to see the previous 6 to understand Avengers 1? No. Do I need to see Avengers 1 to understand Ultron? No. But this one, there are so many comments and kind of decisions made by characters, and hell, even characters being introduced, that they are not explaining at all, that I'm like, this is for the people who've been following all along, and it does not make any apologies for that. And I kind of like that. I mean, we talked about how great the pacing is. How brutal would it have been if they took time to re-explain what Wakanda is, at that point in the film? That's an example of one such thing. When Captain America's like, well, I guess we got to go to Wakanda to fix this. They ain't explaining to you what Wakanda is or why that's a place you would need to go to in this circumstance. They're just going to assume and I applaud that. I think a sequel one prior film in the series should be allowed to do that. I think one with 18 should absolutely be allowed to do that. So I appreciated that, and it allowed the movie to take no prisoners with its pacing as a result.
Especially when you look at, like, Age of Ultron was a remarkably self-contained film.
Yeah.
Like, every part of that story was pretty much told within that story. And even in, like, the best scene in that film is them sitting around the table bantering, and you could probably, like, view that as a reintroduction to all these characters. We're just going to sit them down, have them banter, kind of introduce who they are and who their characters are. There's none of that in this film. As you said, it's just like, Wakanda's in this film. We're going to Wakanda. It's a place with fancy technology. We're not going to tell you why. We're not going to explain it. It just is. Watch Black Panther if you want to know why.
Yeah, that's the funny thing as well about this movie making all the money it did. It's like Black Panther also made insane amounts of money and is still in the theaters in some places.
That was.
So if you don't know, if you saw this and you don't know what Wakanda is, just go next door and watch that movie.
There was actually the opening weekend of Infinity War was the first time 2 Marvel films have been in the top 10 in the US box office at the same time.
Yeah,
Which
they're usually more paced out. Yeah.
And, like, well, in fairness, Black Panther was released in February. You think it should be out of theaters by now, but people still really want to see it.
I guess, yeah. That's the thing. I don't know if even they expected it to still be there, but it's that was a home run of a movie. But yeah, it was really great that they didn't feel that need to pander and over explain things. They prioritized the right things in this film, I feel.
Like, yeah, the only thing I can think of that they took the trouble to re-explain was what the Infinity Stones are.
Yes, yeah. And I think it's even the same characters. Wasn't it Doctor Strange? Didn't that film have an explanation of what they were, or am I mistaken?
I think it was one of the Thor films.
Was it? Okay. Yeah, they've definitely covered what those are before, yeah. But even so, that's what that is. It's also very brief. That's like, again, a 30-second explanation, core premise of what we're doing here. But yeah, did not dilly-dally around. The other thing as well is I was when I rewatched it, I forgot how quickly Iron Man meets Doctor Strange. I was like, oh yeah, that's like he has like one conversation before that happens immediately, you know.
Mm-hmm. And at least Pepper Potts gets to show up in that one conversation.
Yeah, she got that one combo. She's one of those 25 people getting a nice big check for this one.
Sure is.
Along there with Chris Evans. I mean, I think in terms of like screen time and work put in versus how much they're getting paid, I think Chris Evans is the king in this one.
Yeah, poor Cap gets. I suppose, like, we'll talk about this, but like I imagine he'll play a rather more central role in the second part of the story.
Yeah, right. So they filmed the next one. It was all filmed in one quick, filmed in succession. So I'm sure. I imagine maybe there was chopping and changing of what's in this and what's in the next one, and which bits go where, and at what point do these characters come in. And in a film where pacing is so important, I'm sure there were additional scenes that were taken out and shuffled around and all that stuff. But yeah, in this one he gets his big comeback moment, and he gets to do some cool Captain America things, but that's about it. He's not really a central figure.
I will say, I love that comeback moment so much.
It's pretty great. It's pretty great. He's rocking his new look, which is just way better than the silly outfit.
He's standing behind that train looking like a man of mystery, and then they kick in the old school Avengers theme, and he just shows up and kicks some ass, and I'm like, I love this film. I love it so much.
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
Though you mentioned chopping and changing, if you look at the trailers, there's a lot of shots from those trailers that aren't in this film.
Yeah, they're not in the film. There's a lot of voiceover that's not in there. There's a lot of Hulk in there.
Yeah,
that's not in
the hero shot of that trailer is everyone marching toward the alien force, one of whom is Hulk, and Hulk is not in this film for very long.
I wonder if that's maybe something that might have gotten shuffled into either. I'm thinking either it got shuffled into part 2 because I feel like everyone in that shot. Oh wait, no, Black Panther's in that shot, isn't he? Okay, well maybe not. So I can't. So maybe that's not the case. But maybe maybe that was done as
A misdirect.
a misdirect in the trailer. Yeah, where they wanted you. They didn't want to show their hand too much with the Hulk direction. You know.
Hmm.
So that's possible. You know, the other thing is a lot of the voiceover lines, a lot of the monologues. Not only are they not in the movie, but again, watching that trailer back, they all sound like things that might be more apropos in the next film.
Like, not only are they not in the movie, one of those lines is by Nick Fury, who's not in the movie. He's in the post-credit scene, but he's just not in the movie.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm wondering again how much of that is in. Yeah, but the more I think about it, the more I do side more on the idea that they were just put in there as a misdirect. Yeah, I forgot there's actually there's no Sam Jackson bar the post credit scene. So yeah, I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think where else do you go talking about this film, because there is so much happening. One thing I appreciated about it was that even though we've known all along that that the Guardians of the Galaxy is a Disney property, it is a Marvel property, we've known they're going to cross over. It's not like any kind of revelation. Despite all that, I still think this felt like an occasion. To the degree of, if, you know, like, I don't know, like if 15 years ago they had, you know, Blade pop up in an X-Men movie, like that would have popped you huge as a pop culture occurrence. That would have been great. Even though it was all a known quantity and it was all known, these were all leading to the same point, it still felt like this cool occurrence. And I think part of that is just because Guardians was this unexpected overnight success. That first film in particular really felt like it grew past this idea of it as this niche kind of weird comic book entity that people didn't really care about, and it got a following all of its own. So it did feel like it was this series with its own identity crossing over into the Avengers world, which felt really cool.
And I loved how, like, the first scene introducing the Guardians felt like they literally just cut away to a Guardians of the Galaxy film.
Yes. Yeah.
From like visuals to music to, like, obviously character banter, and then Thor shows up and it slowly shifts back towards being an Avengers film. But yeah, it's just like we're watching Guardians for a few minutes and then suddenly the Avengers show up. Yeah,
and they walk that balance really well, as they always tend to do in these movies, because they often have to balance things like, you know, seriousness and comedy and things like that, and that's something this film does really well. And also, walking the balance of the two tones of what we expect from the Avengers and the Guardians is done really well.
And it does help that, like, the Guardians have literally been segmented, except for, like, they've interacted with Thanos, but they haven't interacted with any of the, like, Earth-based superheroes, or even the Celestial-based, if you consider Thor Celestial-based. But, like, they've been segmented off, so you get all those interactions, and all those interactions are new and fresh, as opposed to, like, Spider-Man and Iron Man's relationship is important to this film, but we've seen plenty of Spider-Man and Iron Man before.
Yeah, and we've seen plenty of Iron Man and everyone, really. So that's the choice of the various groupings was very well done in this film, I thought. With room for more different switch ups, and perhaps one big group come together in the next film. It was really well done. I really liked the Thor and Rocket tandem. That was very enjoyable.
And it was like one of those where you wouldn't be like, going into this film, it's like, I can't wait for those Thor and Rocket Raccoon interactions, but then it's like, those Thor and Rocket Raccoon reactions were really good.
Yeah, they were really great. Other than, I'm trying to think of characters who maybe didn't quite do a whole lot, other than Captain America. I mean, Black Panther kind of, I think Wakanda, it gets a lot of focus. I think, you know, Black Panther is kind of just the proxy for that. Obviously, we got lots of Spider-Man. That was great.
Like, I'd had as a guess they were probably, like, filming Black Panther closest to when they were filming this, which is the reason there's probably less Black Panther in there than there is, say, Iron Man or Doctor Strange.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, so I suppose I'd probably be remiss not to talk about Thanos.
I was gonna put the Thanos next, because I think it feels tried to say, oh, it's like it's a good villain for once, but I don't even think it's right to call Thanos a villain.
I still think it is.
Okay.
I'm not into the Thanos was. I mean, he's a good type of villain in that he has justification that you can kind of wrap your head around and understand, while still thinking of him as a crazy villain. I still think of him that way, but I understand where you're coming from. I mean, I really had. I think we talked about it on this show. I had some pretty significant doubts about this film, and I think it was especially because like the trailer hit right around the time Justice League came out, and I was like, boy, do I not want to see another one of these.
Steppenwolf.
I mean, yeah, we were fresh off Steppenwolf. I was like, I don't want to see another CGI piece of trash and a CGI army fighting some good guys to control the universe. I don't care. And obviously those fears were alleviated. And what I did appreciate was that a lot of time in this film, like a surprising amount, was dedicated to fleshing out the Thanos character. In a way that he is, whereas as we mentioned, they're not re-explaining any other characters. Every other character is just there being who they are. But the one character who is introduced and who is built up and who feels like they are the central character of the story, it is Thanos. We understand his origins. We understand his relationship to Gamora. We understand why he wants to do what he wants to do. We understand, there's some kind of character nuance in that, there are some opportunities in the film where he probably could have killed certain characters but didn't for whatever reason. Like there's a lot going on there, and far much more than the typical superhero villain, especially in the MCU.
The thing I really like about Thanos, and I picked up this a lot more the second time I saw the film, so it does suggest there is depth to the film, but that he feels the burden of what he's doing. He's not just mustache twirling. He's not just a sinister evil person who wants to destroy half the world just because. When he actually achieves his goal, which, fair enough, if you've listened this far and not realized we're spoiling this film, I'm sorry. But this film ends where Thanos succeeds, he clicks his fingers and destroys half the universe. And that he feels that burden. There is a burden on him for doing that. He understands that's a drastic and terrible thing to do, but he feels it's necessary. But what I really liked is that he does feel that. It's not just a thing he does and he's cackling and he's so happy at himself. He's actually, there's the line in the film, what did it cost? And he says everything. Which,
yeah,
there's depth there. He's not just, as I said, evil mustache twirler. Yeah,
absolutely. And obviously sacrificing Gamora as well, which it was surprising. And I really liked that dynamic because I feel like they intentionally subverted the idea that he was a mustache twirling villain, because Gamora in that scene with the Soul Stone is convinced that his plot has come to an end because, of course, he doesn't have anything to sacrifice to get the stone because he doesn't love anything because he's an evil monster. But she was wrong, and she was kind of an audience proxy, and I think everyone was wrong. Although on a rewatch, especially, the thing I did think about that scene was she is the only person on the face of this earth who doesn't know what's coming in that scene.
And even it's very convenient that the moment he's there, he happens to have the one thing he cares about there to sacrifice. But I'll let it go.
Yeah. We let it go. You let it go. Also, speaking of that scene, Red Skull.
I know.
What a call! I mean, you have to. I came out of this film, not to be hyperbolic. I think we've discussed the highs and the lows of the MCU in this series. I think I came out of this film less cynical in general about the MCU than when I went in, because when they pulled that out of the bag, this deep, if you pull out this reference from this movie, then honestly most people probably don't even really remember or think about. Yep. And I, having just rewatched it not that long ago with you for this show, I completely forgot what even the Red Skull even did in that movie. That was the deepest pull imaginable. To the point when he was on screen, I was like, "Wait, is that a guy who looks like Red Skull, or is that Red Skull? Am I reading too much into this by thinking that's Red Skull?" That was really impressive. And on the subject of the ending, I mean, obviously that is the big talking point. There's been a lot of Empire comparisons and stuff like that. This is the big dark ending for the Avengers. Their loss at the conclusion of a film. I do really want to talk about just how great that scene was.
Yeah.
In terms of it's not even just kind of one scene. The pretty much the final sort of 10 minutes of the film just as a scene. I mean, I think it's so hard to how do you illustrate what the Gauntlet does in a non-ludicrous or kind of humorous fashion or a campy fashion in a movie, and I like that they just hard cut to that scene. Presumably in Thanos' head, with Gamora, or child Gamora, I think that was such a perfect way to segue from the culmination of that battle, and then segue right back to the battle scene. At which point you have all the characters fading away, and the silence of that scene. They didn't have any dramatic music playing. They really didn't, with the exception of Spider-Man, they didn't milk too many of those deaths. It played as sudden and unexpected, and then they got you right at the end. They got you with the real gut punch with Spider-Man, which first of all I did not see coming. And second of all, it was the perfect, if you're going to try and twist the knife with one of those characters, I think that's the perfect dynamic to do it with, because you have this Spider-Man who's so young and kind of feels like he's again not quite used to the world of the Avengers and fighting for your life and fighting for the universe. It was just so well done, and then ending with Thanos looking out over the horizon. I mean, God, could you have done it any better?
The thing and you mentioned it, the thing I really like about that final scene is they don't overplay it. Black Panther fades into the dust, and you don't see characters breaking down in tears or doing the Darth Vader no, or the kneel in the sand up in the heavens, which a less nuanced film would have. They would have went hard and heavy there, but it's more shock and kind of melancholy than it is sadness or grief. And I think that's important, because I don't think this film expects you to believe those characters are dead,
Yeah.
I don't think the way that scene plays expects the audience to believe that Spider-Man is never coming back, or that Star-Lord is never coming back, Because I think if they went into that scene thinking, oh, we really want to twist the knife, we really got to drive it in, the cynicism would have come out. It's of course Spider-Man's not dead. They have another Spider-Man film announced,
Yeah.
But they play it so solemnly and so quietly and so simply, and as you said, the only one they go big for is Spider-Man, and I think that's more to reflect on what that death, or well, quote unquote death, we'll see, that what that death is meant to mean to Tony Stark, who starts this film saying, oh, I want to have a kid, and then the person to whom he's a father figure dies because, well, he couldn't save the world in front of him. That's the one you should go big on. But other than that, it's just, there's a quiet and a stillness, and as I said, there's just kind of a melancholy there, even down to Thanos in the final scene, where he's just kind of sadly looking over the horizon, looking at the sunrise by himself. It's such a good gut punch in a way that could have been so badly executed, but it's a really good scene. It's a really good scene. Even there's no mid-credit scene. They go all the way through to Avengers Infinity War, and then they just play a quiet, kind of sad version of the Avengers theme, and it's just, even that just drives home the whole scene at the end of the film.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and it's yeah. I mean, I kind of, when I first came out of the film, my reaction was a little muted, because I was I was thinking, well, surely those characters are coming back. But then when I watched it the second time, I kind of really appreciated it. I was like, well, I mean, they probably will, but at the same time, this is still a hell of a story to tell, and a hell of a way to tell it. And now they've raised the stakes even higher for the sequel. Yeah, it was cracking. Yeah, and I think it was such the right call to not have the mid-credit scene. I think that would have been a mistake. I think I worked myself into a shoot a little bit with the actual post-credit scene. I should have known better, but for some reason I was expecting like maybe some kind of tease of a new universe intersecting with the MCU. Like naively maybe bought into the hype of the possibility of maybe like an X-Men thing or something like that. Like when he drops that beeper, I was expecting it to come up as an X, and then it came up with that logo. And
which I assume, like you, like me, you probably Googled afterwards to find out what it was.
My friends are bigger nerds than me, so I just asked them. I goes, "Who's that?" And they told me. So that one fell a little numb on me. But I'm not really a big post credit scene guy anyway. But yeah. So and the interesting thing is, we have between this and Avengers 4. We have 2 movies, but neither of which are chronologically set after Infinity War. They've confirmed that Ant-Man and the Wasp is post-Civil War but pre-Infinity War,
right?
And Captain Marvel is set in the 90s. So there will literally be no advancement of this story until next summer. So you got to hold tight, everyone.
Well, we might get some in Captain Marvel, because obviously, like the end of the Infinity War is Nick Fury calling on Captain Marvel, so I assume they'll probably have something in there.
At the very least, in a post-credit scene, you'd imagine, right? And I would expect both the post-credit scenes in those movies to be Infinity War. Like I would expect Ant-Man and the Wasp post-credit scene is one, if not both, of those characters fading away. I mean, that would be. Or at the very least, they jump forward a few months and he reacts to someone disappearing, and then Captain Marvel. I would imagine. I'm curious, actually. I wonder, would that be post credits, or I wonder, do they just have that movie just straight up end with her being alerted to something going wrong? Although that makes that movie then harder to stand up as a standalone thing. So maybe they won't do that. And then post credits, like she gets the message, and that takes us into Avengers 4, which actually that might be another kind of Black Panther type situation. I think that's March and May, so they'll probably both be in the cinema at the same time again. So 2019 probably going to be another good year for Marvel, I would guess.
I, for one, am interested to see how the Infinity War ending affects Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which is the only Marvel property that runs sequentially with the films, because they acknowledged Infinity War in last week's episode. So is half the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. cast just going to disappear this week?
I mean, I would be more inclined to watch the show if there was a dramatic change like that. But I wouldn't get my hopes up just yet. So it's funny. The other thing as well is that we're waiting on an official title for Avengers 4,
which I assume they withheld that because it'll reference what happened in Infinity War in some way. So I'm interested to see what it is.
Yeah. Also, I think we discussed that kind of cynicism and that kind of idea of, taking the ending seriously. After seeing this film, I was like 100% convinced. It's like, okay, I think their official line is we want this film to feel like its own thing. We don't want people to think it's one 5-hour film split in half. But now after watching it, like, okay, they definitely did that so people would bite a bit harder on the ending. Yep. I think you call it Infinity War Part 1, and people leave the theater assuming. I mean, most people do, but I think people leave the theater like knowing that they're bringing the characters back. So that was probably a smart call. So who knows what they'll call it? I'm sure it'll be all right. But I'm sure we won't have too long to find out. I mean, God, it's out next year.
Yeah, I assume once the theatrical run ends, that's when they'll be like, boom, this is what it's called.
That would make sense.
Which, looking at how much money this film makes, that probably won't be until like December, maybe. Yeah,
Christmas we might get that name.
It is interesting when you look at the people who are left after the ending. It is mostly the original Avengers cast. So I don't know. They're all dying. They're all dying.
I was actually talking about that with my friends who I saw with. That was interesting. Especially considering, I mean, people were just so convinced it was going to be the end of Captain America and Iron Man.
And in fairness, if you watch the trailers, they lean into that. They're like, "Oh, they're going to die."
Yeah. So I think it kind of makes sense that there could potentially be sacrifices for the newer names. But also, I mean, this really, I mean, starting all the way back with Iron Man, this kind of has been a Tony Stark arc.
Mm-hmm.
So I like the idea that the older kind of tired heroes have to get the band back together one last time to try and save everything. You know, specifically Captain America and Iron Man. They reference their falling out, but they don't go into it in this film.
And they don't interact at all. Yeah,
they don't interact at all. So and also it as you mentioned with the parallels with the beginning and the end of the film, but in general it just so much of these 18 films have been about Tony Stark doing lots of things right, but also him making lots of mistakes and having to deal with his mistakes and dealing with the fallout of the Avengers. Like that's so much of Iron Man 3 is that, and then you have him, you know, the fallout of Civil War, and it's like it makes sense that he lives to see the fallout of the terrible thing that has happened as a result of his failure in this movie. And of course, the real failure is Quill, but he's gone now. So
that's actually that I think that's my least favorite part of this film.
What's that?
The bit where he snaps and just starts punching Thanos in the face, and then Thanos makes his big baby face come. Well, he'll come back, I guess. But that just like that's the only time I was like, ugh.
I don't know. I kind of liked it because it made sense. I don't know. I like that scene. I like that fight scene quite a bit.
The fight scene's great because that's the first time you just get like all the Avengers like combining their powers in neat ways.
Yeah, so I like that because it was. I also like that they made Mantis seem kind of useful, gave her something to do. But yeah, you got to have the heroes, you know, dissent among themselves and let their hubris get the better of them. Especially, you know, that's what Star-Lord is, you know.
I suppose. I do like this film is basically a film about sacrifice. Like when there's a through line through the film that Scarlet Witch is unwilling to sacrifice Vision, Loki is unwilling to sacrifice Thor, Star-Lord is very reluctant to sacrifice Gamora, Doctor Strange is unwilling to sacrifice Iron Man, but Thanos is the one that's willing to sacrifice the entire universe for what he considers his greater good. I like that as a through line.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Doctor Strange actually, it seems, I mean, you know, because originally he said he would sacrifice those two to protect the stone, but when a push came to shove, he did not. Although obviously the key line of dialogue from this film, ultimately, I feel is probably when Strange says he looks at the 14 million outcomes. There's just one where they win.
Yep.
So I think it's pretty obvious. He'll explain it, and the music will swell, and they'll realize they have a chance. Where basically the only way, you know, Thanos was going to get the Time Stone either way, so the only way that humanity could win is if Tony Stark was alive to lead the team to victory in Part 2. You know, that's what I'd imagine. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited to find out. You know what? After this, I mean, I'm willing to believe they could also do something completely different and go in some totally weird directions, and who knows what's next after this.
Because the most interesting thing for me is, like, Thanos, can he be the villain of the next film? Like, he's destroyed half the universe. He's just gone off and sitting in his house and his sunset. What motivation does he have? I suppose if they're trying to undo what he did, he might come back and be like, stop it.
Yeah, I'd imagine that's what the motivation would be.
Deaths. What deaths do you think? Well, we had Loki, Heimdall, and Gamora, like, in theory, like, excluding all the people at the end, who one would assume the majority, if not all of which, will come back. Do you think those, like, earlier films' deaths will stick? I did like, actually, when Thor was moaning Loki's death, he was like, he's been dead before, but I think this one is for real.
I think they will have all the non-ending deaths stick.
Gamora, I think, like, Loki's run his course, but Gamora's a big one.
Yes, yeah, but I think there has to be a legacy from this film other than Loki. You know, there has to be a death of note.
Are you saying Heimdall, who you probably wouldn't have noticed was even in the last two Thor films, being killed?
Yeah, I'm afraid that probably won't cut it. Yeah, you know, I think they will stick to those two for certain.
Vision is a robot, so they could just bring him back in the morning.
Yeah, I think honestly, I think everyone else is coming back. I think even you know, even the more disposable characters like, you know, like Vision and stuff like that. I'm like, I think they're all coming. Anyone who died in that final scene is coming back. I think their goal is to use the Time Stone. This is the other funny thing as well. You want to talk about, you know, one thing that might slightly hurt the impact of that big conclusion is that they do show the time stone being used to reverse a death literally seconds before the big conclusion. But what are you going to do? Yeah. So but honestly, I don't take any of those as concrete. I wouldn't even be surprised if Loki was back. You know.
Because it has, in fairness, they do reference. Yeah, he's
been
killed twice in this universe already.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Infinity War. It's a good film.
It's a good movie.
There's a lot in this film, but the margin for error in this film with 40 characters or whatever, and a plot that builds off 17 films and has to stand on its own and set up a sequel. This is a very difficult film to make, and I think they came as close as humanly possible. I could nitpick. I think the Wakanda fight scene is a little lame. It becomes just shooting rockets at faceless aliens, but that's a small part of the film. I think they came as close as you can get to sticking the landing of a film this big.
Absolutely, yeah. It's an impressive bit of work. Absolutely.
Oh, actually, did you spot the Arrested Development reference?
No, not until someone pointed it out online afterwards.
Because I saw it in the credits. I saw, Arrested Development used thanks to Fox. And I was like, I didn't see any Arrested Development reference, so I went looking for it the second time. It's pretty solid. It's very subtle, but it's pretty solid.
Yeah. Once it was pointed out, it was pretty cool.
And our Stanley cameos, he's driving a bus.
Yes, driving a bus. Out of the way early.
Yep, very early, yeah. I like that a bunch of those little side characters, like Wong and Spider-Man's friend, they got their little appearance in the film.
Yeah, they were all in there.
And we only have to wait a year. That's not bad.
Yeah, that's as long a wait as it will. That's not as bad as some of the other waits we had to endure.
Mm-hmm. So this is, I suppose it's not technically. Is it still Phase 3 until the end of Avengers 4, or are we in 3.5?
I think they've called the next one the end of this phase.
Right.
Because also the end of Phase 3 is then what they're calling the end question mark. I mean, they've said they're making more movies, but they haven't acknowledged is it going to be Phase 4 of this same universe or a new phase of a new thing. But yeah, so Phase 3 continues to the next film. I'm fairly sure.
And that's why I think all of the original Avengers are going to die in the next film. But it's neither here nor there.
Yeah. It's all on the line. It's all on the line.
All right, before we go, Barry, plugs.
The usual plugs, twitter.com/thebarrylad for updates on every little thing that's going on, and youtube.com/barrymurphylad for playthroughs of a number of things, including A Way Out and some other stuff. So yeah, that's where I'm at.